It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. I got to work on my background. Your background looks great. It's like very homey. I'm working out of my office for the first time. I got to start like putting pictures up and make it look like I'm in a home.
It's fine. I'm so glad
Picture
we
under
we
my desk.
reconnected after all these years.
Yes, yes.
Then you just moved to Las Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the industry's been really weird lately anyway. So I
Hmm.
feel like the timing for it is all great. I mean,
Hmm.
I moved for my parents, but I just feel like, it was all meant to happen as it was meant to happen.
Did you spend the quarantine time in LA or where?
Oh yeah, I did. But I single girl, don't have any kids, just me and my glass of wine. I ate pizza. I like made all these homemade pizzas and I drank wine every day and I ate ice cream all the time. And oh my God, I definitely got like the COVID-15.
Yeah.
And I think 90% of us, at least, were
Mm.
just kind of like affected in such a way like nobody knew what was going to happen next,
Hmm.
right? And everybody was just kind of confused and especially with kids, like anybody that had children around them, that was
Yeah.
really tough to get anything done,
Yeah, I can imagine.
right?
Especially
Thank God
in
I
the
don't have
beginning, trying to
kids.
keep school online and
Yeah.
everything going. Oh, wow. And in the
I
beginning,
say that phrase so often, like, thank God I don't have kids. Like, I find myself saying it all the time. Not that
uh-huh.
kids are a bad thing. I love other people's kids, but it's just, it was never a thing where I ever had that urge to have children.
Hmm.
And I feel like you really have to have a great partner
Hmm.
in order to do it right,
Hmm.
and I just never felt like I had the kind of partner that I would want to have kids with,
Oh.
you know?
I remember you play poker. Is that something you share with your parents or no?
Actually, I learned to play poker from my mom.
Uh-huh.
My family, basically. My brother, I think, taught me the sort of basics of poker. If your parents like to gamble, then you learn all about those, the cards and the money and the statistics and
And
stuff like
without
that.
children, you don't have to worry about not leaving them an inheritance, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
When did you feel that you wanted to be a storyteller, an actor? And did your mother, was she always supportive of that?
I think it was always in my genetics, always in my blood, just to want to be on stage and telling stories, as you say. My mom tells stories about how when I was a toddler, I
Hmm.
used to go over to the neighbor's little porch because it looked like a stage, and I would sit there on the porch and I would sing songs and make up songs, and the neighbors thought it was hilarious. um, and I would like pretend to put on costumes, and I would sometimes wear like my skirt around my head, and I would be like dashing through, and my mom goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I can't talk right now. The flower girls are late." So I was always performing,
Hmm.
even to like just my stuffed animals or whoever would pay attention. I took drama for every semester in high school.
Hmm.
There wasn't any kind of acting classes offered
Hmm.
earlier than that. Otherwise, I probably would have begged my mother to let me do that. But I took drama in high school as soon as I could and just never learned anything else. Never learned,
Hmm.
how to type or accounting or computers or any of that. Just
Hmm.
drama, drama, drama. That was my whole life.
Hmm.
And I got cast in my first role right after high school
Hmm.
in a show called Growing Pains. And I got that role while I was still living in Hawaii. And I moved to Los Angeles right after that, before the show even aired.
Hmm.
And I was I was only 18, so I was able to get an agent right away. I was able to work right away. I did a lot of commercials and modeling and stuff while I was still in Hawaii. And when I was 16, I won a pageant, the Miss Teen USA pageant,
Hmm.
which really gave me the financial stability to be able to move to Los Angeles and pursue a career in acting.
That must have been an exciting time, I guess, being away from your family for the first time and by yourself in LA.
Yeah.
And tell me what it was like navigating LA back then. I guess this is early 90s, late
No, it was
80s,
the 80s. It was the
80s,
late 80s.
late 80s.
And LA was so fun back then.
Hmm.
I mean, I just, I was more focused on having fun than I was on acting, for sure. And I just there was just this whole world that had been opened up to me.
Mm.
So I just felt like everything just came so easy to me.
Hmm.
It was like it was really unfair
How long did it take to
because
you find out how hard it was for your fellow actors
I
always?
didn't know. I didn't know that it was supposed to be that hard
Mm,
because as soon as I got here, it was so easy for me to find agents. It was so easy for me to find, a manager later. I mean, in the first year, I remember doing my taxes with my mom, and when I told her how much I had made, she said, "You realize that that's more than I ever made raising you two kids by myself."
wow. Mm,
So it was never, I was never in that place where I had to struggle like
mm,
so many people. I would get acting roles every now and then, little guest starring roles here and there, little movies here and there.
mhm.
And it just sort of, it came very easy for me. I didn't really take it seriously until about 10, 15 years in. When I
Mhm.
started taking acting classes, I started realizing that I really should learn what they've been paying me to do for all these years. Before that, I really just came armed with what I had learned from Mr. Bertino in my, high school drama classes. And he, I think, gave us a really good idea of what it was like on the business side of it as well, because he was also still a working actor, working on like Magnum PI and things that were
Mhm,
being done
mhm,
in Hawaii. And so that's pretty much all I knew.
mhm,
People are always asking me, oh, my daughter or my niece wants to get into acting, and I'm like, I don't even know what to tell them now because
mhm.
everything is so different. I mean,
It's
when I
different.
started, there was no such thing as cell phones and internet.
But what about other types of challenges? For example, having a big role in a procedural, for example, like the first, I think it was Nash Bridges or something.
The challenge was that I was shooting that in San Francisco and I still kept my apartment in Los Angeles. So
Mm.
going back and forth doing, that kind of thing was a little difficult. Although I like driving. I really do like thank goodness because I live here in Vegas now and I'm always driving back to LA.
Mm. Did you always have a facility with learning lines and just the amount of lines, I guess, in a procedural must be high, right? Higher than the
Yeah,
movies,
that
even.
was that was a challenge. Before that, I was on a soap opera, and that
Oh.
is the worst job I've ever had in my entire life. Soap operas are so demanding and
Yeah.
so the writing, you know, it's notoriously bad because we're doing a 1 hour show in a day. Whereas in a procedural like, Nash Bridges, you're doing a 1 hour show in 8 days
Hmm.
and there's just no time. You're learning 30 pages of dialogue sometimes in a day. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so, of course, the writers are also writing in a day. So they have no time for rewrites or any of that either. So I think it's frustrating or challenging for everyone.
What was the next breakthrough that you feel you had? I don't know if we're jumping all the way up to the Scorpion King. How did you come into that gig? Wow, what was the process of?
That process was crazy. I went in 6 times to read for that.
Mhm.
Twice to screen test.
Right.
and in full costume and everything. I mean, they treated it as though you had already gotten the job, you know.
Hmm.
They made costumes especially for, you know, fitted and it was a challenge. I mean, they didn't have a specific look or type that they wanted. And so it was open to everyone,
Hmm.
all types, you
Right.
know, all ethnicities, all shapes and sizes. And so I didn't know like what I was up against.
Hmm.
Um, but I did know that it was a role that I felt so connected to because I love these sort of characters that are bigger than life.
In that case, you had a character that was, I mean, looks were important, I guess, to the character, and there was fan service in it, but she always had also had agency, right?
Right.
She's a powerful character. Was that always the case on paper?
She was a sorceress, and in the original script, so much was actually based on her prophecies, which got all edited out later. I mean,
Hmm.
if you get the DVDs, you'll see all the scenes that had been. I mean, we did like a whole month. We did 30 days of reshoots on that movie, and that in itself is a movie.
Yeah.
But 30 days. Um, but so a lot of things were getting rewritten as we were shooting and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, that whole process was kind of crazy. And also it was Dwayne's first really big film. I mean, he had just done a small part on, you know, the
Hmm.
Mummy 3, I think it was before that to sort of introduce his character. But this was his first big film, and so he was, you know, learning a lot as we went,
Hmm.
and it was fun. That whole
Hmm.
process was fun. He's such a fun guy to work with. It was very he's very playful and loves to joke around, and he's just like he's a big boy. He's like
Yeah.
a big 12-year-old boy, you know.
With the pranks and stuff on
Yeah,
set,
with a
right?
lot of
Yeah.
pranks and fart jokes and, you know, stuff like that.
Our community is very diverse. We're, San Francisco, which I love, extremely diverse. I lived there for a while. But I myself came across that consideration of the role that race played when they were thinking about making movies in a large scale. Did you notice any changes from the 80s and going into the Scorpion King as far as representation or or the type of roles that you were being offered or apt to or the way the
Oh,
scripts were written?
absolutely. Back in the 80s, there were no Asians in lead roles in just about anything.
Hmm.
You know, you had Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, you had all this kind of martial arts type things.
Hmm.
And that's, you know, what I ended up doing, right? I ended up starting in a lot of action stuff.
Right.
Martial, you know, Nash Bridges into
Mm-hmm.
martial law, Scorpion King, Cradle to the Grave, X-Men. Those were all action stuff. And it was
Hmm.
like I felt like it was the only way as an Asian woman that I was able to break in
Hmm.
because nothing else was being written for us.
Hmm.
But somehow everybody wanted to see, you know, Asian ladies kicking ass.
Hmm.
And so I had to really lean into that. It was never my intention. Uh,
Hmm.
I started taking martial arts in my late 20s because I had a roommate who got her black belt and
Hmm.
asked me to come to her black belt ceremony. And I was just enthralled. I remember watching her and just in being in tears because I was just so moved by that whole process. And I started classes like that week.
Hmm.
And so I didn't start taking martial arts with the idea that I was going to end up using it in my work. It just kind of happened to go that way. And I loved it. I loved being able to do all this action stuff because I didn't have to play the victim anymore. I didn't have to play, you know, the damsel in distress.
Right.
Um, I was like the villain. I was the woman who was saving myself or other people. And so it was really fun for me. Before that, it was always stereotypical roles, right?
Hmm.
And this, I guess, became the stereotype back in, those days where
Hmm.
all the Asian girls suddenly had to do martial arts and
Hmm.
had to know how to kick ass and all that stuff. But and I'm sorry for that. I
Yeah.
was just trying to work. I was trying to, just make a living and
Hmm.
get in front of the camera and do my thing. And that if that's what it took to get representation, then that's what it took.
And you were already, you were always athletic, right? It was always even before the martial
Yeah,
arts,
I
right?
did dance as a kid,
Hmm.
I was, I did ballet and things like that. And so, yeah, I was always athletic. So martial arts came very easy for me.
Hmm.
Um, and I loved it. I loved how, especially doing the forms, the katas. I did karate. And I loved how it felt like learning choreography.
Hmm.
And it was beautiful to me.
Mm. I love karate. I did it too when I was a
Yeah.
kid. Even though I'm a pacifist, there's something about how it looks and that
Yeah.
it's so much fun, you know? And
Believe me,
there's
I don't want to get into fights either.
yeah. Yeah, but
And
it's
have,
like
if I was forced to actually have to get into a fight, I don't know that I would do that well.
right, it's a different thing. But I guess it's a way for us to put that part of our brain, which is there through evolution, into something that is less harmful and just fun that we can enjoy in a way. But
Yeah,
it's within us.
exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about X2 because I'm a comic book nut. I guess I've always done comics, worked in films like that, been part of films like that. And to me, X2 is one of the classics. I mean,
Thank you.
and
I mean, I like to think so too, but
no,
I might be a little
like
biased.
in every sense. And Bryan Singer controversy aside, I know so many people who work in it, and some are dear friends of mine, and I feel like that cannot be lost. That huge accomplishment that that movie was. Detailed what your process was to get the role and the challenges because it's such a physical role and Hugh Jackman and besting Hugh Jackman in the sense of Lady Deathstrike being a more of an agile opponent even than him, what that whole process was like.
Well, when I was auditioning for that, I remember going into the room and it was all Asian women. Um, and yet we were reading auditions of a character that was not Asian.
Hmm.
And I remember reading this audition, and it was for the role of this woman who was in the comic books, but she was like this redheaded reporter, and I was like, I walked into the room, I was like, why are they looking at only Asian women for this role when
Hmm.
she's not Asian? But I was like, oh, maybe they just want diversity somehow. So I do the audition, and then they asked to look at my hands,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh, great, I hate my hands. And then I get the call that I got the role. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. So I'm super excited. I go in for the fitting, and the costume designer tells me, oh, isn't it so exciting? I love the name of your character. And I was like, what is she talking about? It was so, and she's like, yeah. I go, well, what is it? And she goes, Lady Deathstrike. And I was like, oh, it's a whole different person. I
Hmm.
had no idea that that's what I was doing. So they gave a fake role for the audition and fake sides and everything, and didn't tell us what we were reading for.
Hmm.
They didn't even ask me if I could do martial arts. I guess they knew from seeing my stuff on martial law. I remember doing my first interview after that, and I asked them, the producers, I said, is there anything that I'm not allowed to say, or what can I talk about?
Hmm.
And they left it open for me. So in my first interview, I said that I was playing the character of Lady Deathstrike. I got in much trouble with Fox. I got
Right.
fired from the
Hmm.
job. Uh,
Wow.
but the only thing that was my blessing was that I had asked first, and
Uh-huh.
they didn't tell me that I couldn't say anything.
Uh-huh.
So that's what got me out of trouble was the fact that, I had asked permission, I was not warned, and so I was able to bring that back to the table.
How was it working with the amount of special effects and choreographers in these movies is very different from, I guess you've done it with the Scorpion King,
Yeah.
but
But
the scale is very different from the TV stuff you were doing, right? And
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you're working with these giant mega budgets, these
mhm.
studio tentpole films,
Yeah.
it's just a whole different animal. For one thing, you have so much more time for everything. Television works so quickly. You have to learn everything very quickly. You're shooting it very quickly. I mean, here it's just like we had months to like rehearse and learn the fights and choreography and get in shape and all of that stuff. I mean, it was such a luxury, completely different from doing television.
Hmm.
I loved it. I was like, what? Anything that you needed, it was right then and there. The budget, it seemed like the budget was endless.
Uh-huh. And aside from whatever the stunt person did, in the stuff that you had to do yourself, does anything come to mind as far as the biggest challenge?
Well, there was a lot of wire work involved in
Right.
this. And wire work is one of those things that you cannot practice on your own.
Hmm.
It's not as though you can go to the gym and do wire work. And it takes completely different kinds of muscles when you're hanging from wires. Um, you take so much for granted, right? When you're like on the floor and you're doing martial arts on the ground. But when you're hanging in the air and you have to throw a punch or a kick or something, you don't have the ground to be able to stabilize you to bring your leg up in the air. It's all your muscle. It's just a whole different feeling. And it's a lot of core. So
Hmm.
I ended up hurting my back
Oh no.
early on in the rehearsals. And I pretty much did the entire movie with pain in my back. Um, Also, I did it almost blind because the contacts that were fitted for me, I have eyes. I don't know if it's because I have astigmatism, but whenever I wear contacts, they kind of float outward, and so the white of the contacts were always blocking my pupils,
Hmm.
so I could almost never see out of my contacts whenever I had them in. And so I did almost all of the fight stuff half blind, with just
Hmm.
fog. Like
Yeah.
I it would be like looking through cataracts. So I learned a lot of the choreography, but all of the wire work and stuff, like the anytime, I get thrown into something or the helicopter spins, anything that was too dangerous, of course, they have a stunt person do. Because they're not going to risk
Right.
me getting injured
Yeah,
doing
just
something.
insurance wise, it doesn't even
Yeah,
make
just
it.
insurance
Yeah.
wise.
No, I was gonna say that to me, the eyes are such an important part of the actor that I would hate to hide it so much. But I guess there was a narrative sense to it.
Exactly.
I think when the character gets killed, like you see your actual eyes for a second, like they
Yeah.
remove so you see that she's humanized for that 1 second, and
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
it was great to see
Which
a
I
little bit
thought
of
was
emotion.
so beautifully done.
It was, yeah.
I mean, I've had a lot of death scenes in my career, and that's still my favorite death scene. I die so often in everything that I do. Whenever I get a job, my mom always says, "So do you die?"
What about working with this huge nails that you had fitted? That must
Oh
have been a
yeah,
pain.
there were some practicals that were done. They took
Hmm.
molds of my hands and they built me some practical nails out of a very lightweight plastic. It was very difficult to have to sit there with those nails on because basically all they did was they had me grow out my fingernails, which lucky for them, I have really, really strong nails. So I,
Hmm.
I was able to grow out my fingernails probably to like this. It's about, a quarter of an inch, and they just crazy glued
Hmm.
those tips to
Hmm.
my fingers. to underside of my nail. And once had all my nails done, I had to sit there. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't eat. I couldn't really, you know, I couldn't open the door of my trailer. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I was just sort of like stuck prisoner, in my room, or
Hmm.
if I wanted to be on set, couldn't do anything.
Hmm.
So I would actually spend a lot of time in my room just kind of practicing what it would look like in front of the mirror. How I could move with the actual nails to see what kind of movements I could do
Hmm.
that made the nails, sort of look like they were deadly and still graceful, you
Hmm.
know. So yeah, I had a lot of time alone, many, many hours alone, just kind of hanging out in my trailer, moving around. But most of what we did during the fight was CGI
Hmm.
because the nails wouldn't stay on very well. I couldn't move around. And also, when I'm fighting, it had to look like the nails were penetrating his body and stuff. And so you couldn't, get that close to his body.
Hmm.
It would have to be all done in CGI.
Same with
Um,
Hugh, right? With his
with
claws.
Hugh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Um, and um, and I actually had a fight scene also with Jimmy,
James
but
Marsden. I've talked to some of my friends who are in some of the recent Marvel movies, and or sometimes in some of these ensemble movies when they come in as a villain, and sometimes they feel like the people have been working for a long time and they're this cohesive unit, and that plays into the relationships on set a little bit. Like you might be feel isolated. Did you feel any
yeah,
of
you're
that,
like an
or
outsider a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
times.
yeah?
Yeah.
Or did you connect? Do you have any memories of connecting with certain parts of the cast, and how was it different to work with each and their process?
Well, I think everyone was great to work with. I
Hmm.
mean, most of my scenes were with Brian Cox, and he always plays these like super serious, mean sort of characters, but off screen, he is dancing and singing and tapping, and he's so playful and
Uh,
so much fun.
yeah.
I just loved working with him. I mean, and kind of Hugh was kind of like that too.
Hmm.
They all come from musical theater.
Yeah.
And so they all sing and dance, Alan Cummings, Jimmy Marsden,
Hmm.
Hugh, of course. I mean, all the guys anyway. None of the
Hmm.
girls did for some
Hmm.
reason.
Hmm.
But so there was a lot of singing and dancing and all of that stuff going on off screen, and it was just so much fun. Um, it was like really playful and kid-like, which is such a great environment to work in
Hmm.
because it keeps you creative and sort of it makes you feel safe and open to trying new things. It's just it's a environment that just makes you feel like you're allowed to do anything.
Hmm. I've heard a
Yeah.
lot of friends also who are very comfortable in that environment like that, like having a playful and relaxed
Mhm.
environment, even if the scenes are very tense. There are a few who are very method. Have you had an experience with actors like that, and how was it for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes I tend to be that way too. I'm not one of those people who can just turn on the faucets and all of a sudden I'll start crying.
Hmm.
I really have to work my way into it.
Hmm.
And I need to concentrate and stay in that mindset in order to get through a scene like that. There are some actresses, especially,
Hmm.
it's always women who have to cry, right? It's never men. And so there are some girls who I work with who can be super playful and dancing and joking, and then all of a sudden they sort of like they call action, and they're just like, and they're just like all of a sudden just turn on the tears like faucets.
Hmm.
I do not have that talent. So I get it. There are some people who have to stay that way, and I respect that. You know,
Hmm.
you have to, as an actor, um, r- read the temperature of the room.
Hmm.
And if you are in a scene with an actor who has a lot to do emotionally and needs to sort of concentrate and stay, you don't laugh and make jokes and be loud and obnoxious, and you know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
um you really have to understand who you're working with and what their way of working is, and not distract from that.
Right. That's something that's essential for us directors is understanding the process of each individual actor and try to maximize that. But
Yeah.
I guess the conflict comes in when there, and I love my favorite actor is Daniel Day-Lewis, and he's
Oh,
like famously in his own role forever. Like people had to refer to him as Lincoln basically on that. So like I respect that, especially because of what he creates, his art. But I've also heard of the problem that comes when you have people who do not respect each other's process. So you may have somebody like him and then someone that doesn't want to respect the other one's space to
and
concentrate.
sometimes actors get this bad reputation, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
For yelling and screaming, and everybody's like, "Oh, so and so, such an asshole. He's so difficult to work with." It's because they don't understand the process,
Right.
and they don't understand that it's distracting when you're in a scene and somebody is running around in your eye line in the background doing other things, and you're just like, I can't have that.
Hmm.
You know, I need to concentrate on this moment. I can't have you in my peripheral moving shit around or laughing and joking and playing tricks on each other or whatever, And so you can see, the actor who had that blow up and everybody was like, oh my God, he's such an asshole to work with.
Christian Bale, who
Christian Bale. You have to understand the
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, I
Um,
think from outside people, well, for one thing, people are always attracted to any conflict and behind the scenes kind of,
People
but
love
and
gossiping.
especially judging people without knowing them. I mean, my experience with Christian, which is brief, but I so respectful and admire him a lot. And I know what you were talking about. I directed a film in which we were recording it silently. The woman is trapped, she's been kidnapped, and it required such an arc for her to play for my actress within this room in this moment, critical, and she's playing like years passing there in a single action. And I had and everybody, because we weren't recording sound, they were like laughing and making jokes, and the crew was driving me nuts. And of course, I had to tell them and be, strict about it. But imagine what that was doing to the actress, and that's one moment that I would never get back with this actress at this time, and people don't
I
understand that.
totally understand that. And that's why it's so important to have a crew that is really respectful
Hmm.
and professional, because it's really unprofessional
Yeah.
for them to not know what scene they're shooting and not know the temperature of what the room needs to be.
And also,
In order for
yeah.
the actor to be able to do good work. I've shot in, oh gosh, I remember shooting once in Bulgaria where the first AD just could not get a hold of her crew. And so many times we had to interrupt our scenes and cut
Hmm.
because people were talking in the background. That's just like 101, right?
Right.
Filmmaking 101. When the camera is rolling, nobody moves, nobody talks, nobody does anything.
Hmm.
But it costs a lot of money and time when stuff like that happens. And then it's also hard for actors to be
Yeah.
able to stay in character and not get frustrated because the scene's going great and you're almost done and you're almost at the end, and then all of a sudden somebody in the background says something, or something, a chair falls because people are moving around or whatever,
Yeah.
and it ruins the whole scene.
I spend a lot of time trying to recognize just the input and the value that everybody on the crew has, and the job and what they're giving us. But it's also so critical for us to understand the nature of acting, how fragile that is, how vulnerable an actor must be, and how concentration is the greatest commodity you can have on a set when we're dealing with an actor. And if people don't understand that, that's when disrespectful moments like
Yeah.
that happen, and just not productive at all.
I think people just don't understand the process, how distracting it can be for people
Hmm.
to be doing other things
Hmm.
in your eye line,
Right.
right? And oftentimes you'll have photographers, when they're trying to get like on set photos and stuff like that. And a lot of times they'll be right there in your face, in the scene almost.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you're just like, when you as actors, we have to be also polite and say, can you please not be there, it's
Hmm.
distracting for me. Or there's people that have to be there as it is,
Hmm.
people who are working the camera,
Hmm.
doing, pulling focus. There are people who have to be there, but people who don't have to be there need to get out of the way,
Hmm.
because it just, there's just too much distraction sometimes.
Right. And I think another thing to consider is, for some people, any time they're shooting might be as demanding on them physically, whatever they're doing. For an actor, this one scene may be something that has them recalling things from their childhood, like going through an emotional process that is really draining, and to
Yes.
and to have that invaded, or disrupted in some way by somebody that's just not taking that into account, how what a
Right.
powerful process that is and how fragile it is.
Right.
It's painful. It's painful when
Yeah.
that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's painful for the director
Yeah.
to not be able to grab that shot,
Exactly.
or for a shot to be ruined, a take to be ruined. It's like the perfect take. And then all of a sudden it's ruined because, something happens off camera. And as actors, we're so sensitive.
Hmm.
Whenever a director wants to do another take, I always assume that it's because I did something wrong.
Hmm.
You know, I'm never thinking, oh, maybe I wasn't in focus, or I'm not thinking like, oh, he wanted a different camera angle or whatever. I just immediately think, oh, I need to do it better, or I need to do it different, or because we have such fragile egos too,
Hmm.
that I think we need a lot of reassurance, like, okay, that was a great take, don't change anything, we just need to do this. I need to know that,
Hmm.
otherwise I'm going to try to give it to you different, or I'm going to try to do something else, or I think there needs to be communication between directors and actors, and the best directors are always people who have taken acting classes,
Hmm.
because you have to know how to talk to your actor.
Right.
You can't
Yeah.
just say, hey, can you bring that up 20%?
Right.
I get that a lot.
Yeah. Just faster,
Yeah.
quicker, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Faster. Just do everything, but faster.
Yeah. Yeah. I may not act all the time, but I did it early on. And I think that's a big part of my education as a director, actually, just to
Oh,
understand that process. So,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's so demanding. It's so demanding. And the other thing that you have, I mean, of course, it comes with huge privilege, but it's also like your face on there. Like other
Yeah.
people are not as exposed as you are. You're gonna get all the criticism. You're gonna get all of that, and
Exactly.
it just
Nobody's
requires.
gonna nobody's gonna realize that in that scene,
Hmm.
all the things that you had to deal with, you know. Oh my gosh, I was doing this one film that was a indie film, and very, very low budget, and the entire time my costume was safety pinned on me because it just didn't fit, and there was
Hmm.
no alteration, or
Hmm.
and it was just like or my shoes never fit right. And so I had to stuff it with like newspaper, and I couldn't run in them much. I mean, I could barely walk, much less try to run in these shoes that didn't fit. I mean, nobody's thinking that.
Mhm.
Nobody's thinking, oh, yeah, she's probably not running because her shoes are too big, or, or her clothes don't fit right, or, that wig is squeezing her head for the last 12 hours and giving her a migraine.
Mm.
I mean, nobody's thinking that way.
Exactly. Do you happen to remember any time where you had a happy accident? It's pretty common for improvisations to make it into the final cut, for example. Something that may have been a playful idea may end up being the defining shot sometimes as well.
I remember once I was working with Robert Carlyle on a
Hmm.
film tournament, and he plays a priest, and I play a assassin, and it's a tournament of assassins. A lot of action, lot of action,
Mm.
and there's this chemistry between us, which can never get played out because he's a priest, I'm an assassin, and towards the end of the film, there's this scene where we're walking together and I'm completely injured and just worn out from this whole experience. And we're just trying to make it to the other side. And in the shot, our hands accidentally touch. It wasn't written that way,
Mm.
but our hands accidentally touch, and we just kind of went with it, and we just looked at each other, and it just added this kind of chemistry and this pull that was just so much more beautiful, that it
Mm.
just brought all of this extra stuff
Mm.
to the scene. They ended up having to shoot like a close up of our hands brushing each other
Mhm.
because it just made the whole scene.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Those are the special moments. And so many moments like that, I think, just the human interaction, the possibilities, not necessarily the error, but the possibility of error, that electricity is something that I hope is not lost with all this advent of AI generated
Exactly. Because
falseness,
AI is never going to be able to catch these kind of moments.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
Everything is so planned and articulated.
Mm.
And acting is not about that. Acting
Hmm.
is about being in the moment and reacting and being human.
Being human. I mean, that's the whole point of art, right?
Yes.
Connecting as humans.
Yes.
Scary, and mostly because of the political implications of having people even more disinformed than they are. If people were easily fooled
Also,
by WhatsApp messages and Facebook posts that were not real, imagine now that
yeah,
everything can be faked so faithfully.
everything. And people are already losing their ability to have critical thinking.
Hmm.
Um, And even more so with AI, people are going to lose their ability to think,
Hmm.
period. Um, and will be full of misinformation.
Hmm.
And you can't even have a basic discussion or debate because everyone will be misinformed and nobody will be able to think anymore for themselves. It's a
And
scary time.
very scary. When you said that about not thinking, and it made me think about remember the movie Wall-E, what happens to humans, to their bodies, because they're
Yeah.
not doing the work? That's what's going to happen to our brains, I think. It might be atrophied because we're not doing any work. I mean, people who rely just on AI to do everything for them.
Yes.
I mean,
And that's
hopefully,
what keeps us going. I mean, we need purpose to
yeah,
survive.
yeah.
We need uh connection and communication, and that's what makes us live longer. That's
Mhm.
what gives us purpose. That's what gives us a will, right? With all of that taken away, what do we live for?
Yeah. And it's like taking ourselves out of the equation in the sense that, okay, we replaced first the technological part, then the artistic part, and then we might as well replace the audience, and then it'll be a closed loop and we'll be out of it completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's coming up so fast, and we're
Mm.
losing control of
Yeah.
it. We are destroying ourselves.
And when people sadly are moving away from real journalism and take all the information from just social media that can be so easily manipulated by hackers or by foreign interests and whatever, and just take everything without questioning.
Yes,
I mean, there goes democracy because you're not making a real choice when you don't have the facts, right?
exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, we need journalists. We
We
need
do.
people trying to find the truth. We can't just say, oh, all these people who don't agree, are not allowed to be in the White House or be on Air Force One, or, only people who agree with this administration are allowed to report,
Right.
from here.
Because then
I
it's
mean,
propaganda. It's not even journalism. It's propaganda.
exactly. That's dictatorship, right?
Dictatorship, yeah, for sure.
And we need checks and balances.
Definitely. It's such a blow when I start to think about it because also, back when and I was very appreciative that you were so vocal when we supported Obama back in the day.
Mm.
But even our opponents back then, I felt a measure of, there were people who were honorable and were trying. I felt, McCain, even though I didn't agree with him on basically anything personally, but the fact that he was patriotic, and
Oh my God, yeah. And McCain proved later on that
yeah,
he was, a decent human being.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
he had the strength of character to stand against Trump and call him out on everything when he needed to.
and now we just have a bunch of chickens in the Senate, government in general. Everybody's just so worried about keeping their jobs
And
that nobody's worried for the public anymore.
it's so painful to me to see that the right, the entire party basically knelt down to somebody as morally decadent and harmful and openly
Right.
hostile to the principles of our nation, like,
Mhm.
equality.
I think that I think that there's so many more people who are somewhere in the middle and we have no representation.
We've talked about this a little bit, but here's where I start to think where I see the problem is not necessarily that we don't have good candidates or anybody to support, but the fact that the right is so united. If we had an ounce of that, their strength comes from the fact that they will support anything and anybody, as even if he's credibly accused of abusing women, even if he's disparaged people with disabilities, even if he's blatantly racist, he can do anything. And they're so greedy for power that they will
Well,
support anybody. If we unified, because the worst of our candidates is not going to be as bad as that, especially to our
right,
communities, for example, right now, communities of color, undocumented folks. I mean, they're never going to be as bad. So you have to make a practical choice. If we're going to be purists, there's times where you can be purist. I think it's called the primaries, or, and if we have, great candidates all around and we can still win. But if the option is we either go with this tyrant who's going to harm our population, discriminate gays, lesbians, transgender people, discriminate folks the way he is, I think that's when we gotta rally together and support
well,
whoever the opponent is.
the problem is we only have two candidates. We only have two sides to choose from. And and I know a lot of people who voted for Trump because they were worried about immigration. Most people just vote on one issue,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Whether my mother votes about on abortion because she's Roman Catholic. My friends voted because of Israel. They thought that he would be better for Israel. I have other friends that voted because of the immigration issue for
Hmm.
him. I mean, most people vote because of one thing. They're not thinking in broad strokes. They're not thinking, well, if we vote for this candidate, this could also happen and this could also happen. And I don't agree with this. But that one issue is so important for them that they are willing to overlook everything else.
You're right.
That's the problem.
This is where this information also comes into play. For example, in the case of Trump and immigration, the saddest thing I've seen is folks who are uh, immigrants themselves, let's say who are citizens, for example, in Florida and different places, who voted for Trump. thinking, it could be on the abortion issue or they're Catholic or whatever, different things. And they said, oh, but Trump said that he would only go after criminals. So I'm glad he's going to go and deport criminals. And some of those people, and I've seen these folks who are now crying, it's such a betrayal because he took my husband. Literally, somebody voted for Trump and they deported her husband.
And they think they're safe,
Hmm.
but they don't realize that all of that can be taken away.
Hmm. And the thing is, to me, it's like, okay, you only care about it when it touches you directly, like your own family. It has to be your husband who's deported, because otherwise you wouldn't mind about other children who are going to grow up with other parents because they were deported. I mean, and a lot of people who profess Christianity, for example, just the Bible is all about embracing the refugee, and
Mhm.
extending your arms and being compassionate, I guess. So it's just it's incredible how far we've moved from that in many ways.
Right now, people are so much in fear of losing whatever it is that they have.
Hmm.
Um, well, I'm talking about, people who are conservative because they feel like if we are giving to other countries, then there's nothing in it for us.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and we do need a lot of help here, but
Hmm.
people don't realize that helping other countries does help us
Hmm.
because us giving aid to Africa
Hmm.
for, HIV AIDS does help us in the long run. It helps to not have another global pandemic. I
Exactly.
mean, there's things that we have to do that help us, also that help other countries help us. If we're giving aid to other countries, then they will help us in time of our need as well.
Yeah, we're a social species. I think our fate is intertwined, and we excel when we collaborate. And the strength of this country, I believe, is because we're so diverse.
Mhm.
And it's always been a country of immigrants. So I what I feel is extremely dangerous is this sort of new white supremacy is really what it is. Because if
Mm.
you're attacking DEI programs, you're attacking diversity at every level. You're banning books from libraries just because they have diverse.
You're stopping people from thinking.
Mhm.
You're stopping people from having a choice of making up their own minds. I think so much of it is really about control, right?
Mhm.
Controlling what people think. Because if you can control their minds, you can control everything.
Exactly. The White House went so far, this White House, the Trump White House, went so far as to take off all those pages on their website, the pages of Black heroism from our history. So the version of reality that they want to show wants to exclude the accomplishments of a certain race. I mean, that
Yeah.
is that is so fascist. This is unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
it's
I don't know who that
dystopian. It's
helps.
dystopian. Yeah.
It's just like I don't I don't understand. I maybe people of color who voted for him didn't think that it would go that far.
Hmm.
Maybe they just thought that, and like I said, most people are just voting on one issue. It doesn't even matter what else they do.
I'm curious. I don't know if you had that conversation with your mom exactly, but or how informed she is about what's happening to the immigrant community.
The way she defends things is fake news,
Mm.
you know, um, and then things that happen, for one thing, she thinks that everybody who's being taken is a criminal. Um, and I think that anything else that gets reported that's not uh in that case she thinks it's all fake news, sensationalism, whatever. And that was such a genius, what do you call,
And
creation
evil created.
on there. When you say fake news, there's just like there's nothing else that you can argue,
Right.
right? On the other side. And
Especially for people who, are not thinking, but they just want to believe. If they want to believe something, it's like a dogma. You do not question it. What I say is true and nothing else is true. Everybody else is lying, but Trump is saying the truth. Everybody else is lying. Every other report, from whatever source, whatever evidence, it's not the truth that he's
right.
speaking.
And I hate to sound like an atheist because I'm not,
Hmm.
but isn't that what most religions are?
Hmm.
just sort
That
of this
mm,
dogma,
right.
right?
Hmm.
And you have to just believe whatever
Right.
they tell you and think that everybody else who's not in your religion is less than or
Right.
undeserving
Hmm.
or, doesn't belong or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that whoever controls the religion,
Hmm.
that's why I think that the Republicans Party just hanging their hat on controlling Christianity
Hmm.
and kind of making that their thing,
Hmm.
it was really brilliant on their part.
Hmm.
Because once you have that, it's like you have all these people who just follow faith blindly,
Yes.
right? And then you're like, oh, we're the Christian party.
Hmm.
Then that's it. You've got all of these people who will not even question.
And there, yeah, it's a dogma. And I have to say, there's those people, and they will claim Christianity as a whole or Christ
Yeah,
as a whole. But the truth is also that there are different, churches that are Christian that are actually more open-minded and activist than people who, I march with, supporting even, transgender rights and who support and who appreciate the difference, the support immigrants and support people, a lot of interfaith work,
right.
working with Muslims, Christians, Catholics, who are, there's people who are more conservative in like in every different kind of
Every
church.
religion. Yeah,
Yeah, or Unitarian Universalists are so
right. Yeah,
open-minded. So even within religions, there are open-minded people, and the way I see it is just to have, even if you are not particularly religious, just to have a moral stance of what's good for all of us as a whole and being compassionate,
right.
nature,
But that's where most people find their morals is religion.
and that's the way it was codified for a long time.
Right.
And I'm saying it's important to value that you can have a morality, of course, without having a religion or being from a different religion or within a religion. Um, as we've seen, there's a lot of.
Absolutely. I was just having this argument the other night with a friend of mine who was visiting, who
Mhm,
has for years been trying to get me to go to his church.
mhm.
Just just wants me to go to church with him. And I just refuse. But for him, for some reason, it's so important for me to show up at the church. That like for he thinks that it will help to save my soul. But I'm like, what about just being a good person?
Right.
Doesn't that account for saving souls?
Yeah, and in a way,
Even
that's the.
my mom, all she wanted one birthday. I was like, what do you want for your birthday? She's like, I want you to go to church. I was like, seriously? That's it? That's all you want? And she was like, yeah, I want you to go to church with me. So, oh, it was for Christmas. I gave that to her for Christmas.
Mhm,
I went to church and that was her Christmas present. But
mhm.
that's all she cares about is me stepping into a building
It's
more than how much I act as a human being.
that to me is the start of the problem when you start associating or equating being part of a church or saying something, declaring some allegiance to something over what the actual behavior is like.
Right.
Because then you'll have somebody like Trump that they can defend, but he's always acted throughout his life. Just look at his marriages, everything else, his affairs,
Affairs,
everything else, he's
yeah, I mean,
legally what he's done. How Christian is all of that, and even what he
right.
says, if they judge it honestly according to the teachings of the Bible, how does that compare to Christ? I mean,
Well, my
or
mom thinks that he is religious and that he does go to church every Sunday because he held a Bible.
I and he sells Bibles literally. Oh,
I mean, going to church does not make you a better person.
it does not. It
It
also
doesn't.
doesn't make you
And even if
a
he
bad
was going
person,
to church every
obviously.
Sunday,
Yeah.
it does not make you a better person.
Hmm.
Your actions and respect for humanity and compassion and just generosity, that's what makes you a better human.
Totally agree. And I just wish that people within those churches and knew that you can be outside of the church and be that way, because we know that there are people that just because you're in a church doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you're a bigot or anything like that. You can be part of a church and be a really great person. And I hope they also know that those of us outside the church can also have morals.
I grew up in a very strict Roman Catholic family.
Hmm.
Um, one of my cousins used to be editor-in-chief of a Catholic news magazine. And I remember asking her once, I said, because in Catholicism, only Catholics will go to heaven. Everybody else is like doomed, right?
Hmm.
I said, well, what about the pygmy in Africa, for instance, who's never heard of God or Jesus or whatever? She said, that's why it is our responsibility to go out and mission and spread the word so that everybody has that chance of going to heaven. And I thought, that's really unfair.
Unfair. And it's thinking that God is going to be like this ego who needs people to revere him in order for them to save them. Like only if you
Right.
kneel before me will I save you, whether you're worth as a person or not, whether you're a great, or somebody who's innocent of any crime. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter.
And even in Catholicism, the thief and murderer, as long as at the end of their life they are really sorry for all the things that they've done, you can still go to heaven.
Mhm. Yeah, and you end up with people who justify any crime, like in the church, when there were rapes and things like that.
Mhm.
There's a whole mechanism protecting that just because it's like when Trump was saying in a different level, but he was saying, "Oh, if I do it, it's legal because I'm the president. If I do it, anything I do,
Right.
he basically said that I can do anything."
Oh my God, that's so scary.
Remember when he came out and said, "Oh, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it."
And he was not wrong.
People want that apparently for some reason.
I think people like, well, my family, for instance,
Hmm.
they love how he can just say whatever's on his mind.
Hmm.
They did not want to elect another politician, and they are so sick of politics, and they think all politicians are liars.
But that's the thing that people who don't like politicians, don't like people lying, they go and elect Trump, who's the most manipulative, you know.
But they don't see it because
That's the
it's
problem. That's the problem. They don't see
news,
it.
or yeah, I mean, with the way that things are so polarized, that it's so easy to just say, well, that's what they think,
Hmm.
that's what they want you to think, but I know what's right.
But that's why journalism is so important because there's still facts. There's still what's happening to the environment under Trump. There's still,
Yeah, and
uh,
that's why I think it's so important to not get all of your news or all of your information from one source.
there's got to be objectivity. Objectivity has to be saved because we think only about listening to
Right.
one side or the other, but there is some factual, and there are news outlets that specialize in objectivity. I mean, in just the facts without adding any editorial mindset. And I think that's super important for us to consider and never forget, just to get the raw data. And it's not as sexy, it's not as showy, it's not as flashy, but that's where the
Yeah,
truth
it doesn't make
lies.
money. That's why
Yeah.
news channels don't do it.
When you and I supported Obama, what did your parents think about him and about you being so vocal as you were?
My mom, who was a lifelong Republican, our
Hmm.
family, everybody always, I mean, generational Republicans, for I guess as long as Hawaii was a state and could vote. Um, I was shocked that she actually changed to a Democrat in order to vote for Obama in the primaries.
Wow.
Yeah. And now she regrets it.
No, that's a bad ending.
Somehow, in those
Yes.
4 years, she suddenly flipped, and all of a sudden he became the devil incarnate. And she started believing all this crazy stuff that he was a transvestite that liked to dress up in women's clothing, and that Michelle Obama is transgender, and that she's not an actual woman, and those kids are adopted, and that he was not born in the United States, even though she met Governor Abercrombie, who was friends with the Obamas before Obama was born, before
Hmm.
Barack was born, and knows all of the history and everything, but still it got they all of this They
Disinformation, yeah.
This information got to her. And she it was because she started following, like, her and her friends would start sending each other all this email that the leader of their group
Hmm.
was, she even referred to him as the leader of their group,
Hmm.
um of, the old folks, right?
Hmm.
Started sending out all of these emails that he would find, and all of this misinformation, and convinced that
Hmm.
whole group of people of all of this crazy stuff. She thought that they were having massive orgies in the White House. And, like, it was just so insane. And you still to this day cannot convince her otherwise, because she sees it on the internet and she's like, I know where to find the information. I have proof, and I'm just like, wow, this is how they got to them.
That's what happened
And
at scale
and then also
everywhere.
she moved to Vegas, Clark County, which is a purple state in a purple county, which decides which basically decided the presidential election,
Hmm.
right? Of both this last one and the one and the year before, and the presidential election before when Biden won,
Hmm.
because Clark County went blue. Um, and so I think she's even more targeted because she lives in this area by crazy, news. And also, all she does all day is watches YouTube. So she goes down that rabbit hole because she doesn't hear very well and she
Hmm.
can't have conversation with people very much. All of her information comes from YouTube,
Hmm.
and it's not validated sources. It's not
Right.
vetted sources, I should say, And so she thinks she's getting, like, the real information because she keeps going down these rabbit holes.
Now
Uh,
take that. Sorry, go ahead.
and and yet these are the people who vote.
Exactly.
These are the people who come out and vote every election, big and small. They're the ones making the decisions.
Because on the other side, we have folks like we were talking about who may think that the opponent to somebody like Trump might be not perfect. So they stay home while those people
Yes,
getting that information, they go and vote and
they
decide
do.
the
They
fate of
go
the
out and
country.
vote because they're so sure of what they know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Or people were like, oh, I don't want to vote for Hillary, so I'm just not going to vote at
Hmm.
all,
Hmm.
because she's not a perfect candidate. Or, this last one, oh, people didn't want to vote for Biden,
Hmm.
or Kamala, sorry, because she was not their perfect candidate either. But
Hmm.
all of these other people who are completely brainwashed, who are watching stuff on YouTube, getting all their information, they're very sure.
And this was before AI. So if they
Yeah.
believed just out of an email, imagine now that you
Yes.
can have Obama saying anything they put into his mouth through AI, or it's gonna be chaos. It's gonna be even worse.
Yeah. My mom, as it is, can't, you know, filter what is real and what is not.
Hmm.
She comes from that generation where anything that was said on television was, taken as the truth. And to her, this is everything she reads, she thinks is the truth. And she only reads whatever agrees with her, you
It's
know?
interesting that she places more value on something she reads off of the internet. That's something you might tell her,
Yeah.
and show her sources and stuff. It's
Yeah.
like,
We can't even talk anymore because I can't have a a normal conversation.
mhm.
She doesn't even want to hear the other side of it.
Mm. I,
I'm afraid that that's where our country is going. And the thing is, my mom's not dumb. She has actually done things that a lot of women in her time could not do. She
mhm.
is a very hard worker. She studies about finances. She's crawling out of a hole. When I was a kid, my parents got divorced. We were in debt, and she was able to work hard and invest. And she is by no means a dumb person.
Mhm. It's just the
So
critical thinking and questioning of.
absolutely. And that's another thing that I think we do as a society is we just assume that everybody else who is of, believes in the other party is stupid.
Mhm.
My brother always calls me, what does he call me? Or he used to, he stopped doing it recently, but he used to call me a Hollywood liberal elitist. And
Sometimes
I
they
was
think
like,
we eat babies and things like that. Like there's all
yeah,
these conspiracies.
yes. Oh my God. Somebody actually asked me that once. Oh, coming from Hollywood, did you meet all, these people who are like, and I was like, I didn't understand what they were saying at first, but then they were like, the ones that are like, using babies' blood and trafficking children. And I was like, yeah,
Mm.
there are still people out there who think that that's seriously going on.
Oh God, I really wanna, I keep thinking, how do we turn this into a positive message? Because we need hope. We still need hope. We need to remain in the fight. We need to find hope even in this direst of situations.
I think what we need to do is we need to put down our phones more often and just go out and meet people.
Yeah.
Not talk politics, but
Hmm.
just see each other as human beings.
Hmm.
Because when it comes down to it, we all want the same stuff. We all want to be safe. We all want to be happy. We all want to have a clean environment, clean food to eat, clean water to drink. You know, I, we are so much more alike than we are different, but all we do nowadays is focus on our differences. I have so many friends who are Republicans. I have probably more now friends who are Republicans than Democrats even. Um, but that doesn't make me love them any less.
Hmm.
We're all human beings. We need to see even these people who are not in our country, who come from other places as humans and not just invaders or criminals.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone's struggling. Everyone's just trying to get by, and everyone's just trying to do what they think is best for their families.
I totally agree with that. And I think that was beautifully said. I think a challenge, at least for me, is to be able to offer that perspective while still calling out what are attacks on human rights.
Mm,
Because I feel that if we don't do that part of it, we're normalizing that behavior. If we say, we're all the same, which we are, we all want the same, which we do, but we fail to point out those injustices, they become the new normal. And some people may
right,
just accept it as law. And
right. I'm not, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't think we should accept things like that. People getting kidnapped.
mhm,
I think that as a community, though, if we can see people as humans,
mhm,
it would people would agree less with those kind of tactics.
mhm,
People are so tribal these days. Whatever
mhm,
tribe they're in, they need to protect and need that tribe to be the ones controlling everybody.
mhm,
Uh, I just don't see it that way. You know,
mhm,
I I don't see us gaining as a human race if we continue thinking in those terms.
mhm. Yes, we do have to move beyond that.
Yeah,
I also think that it's important to. Because whataboutism, it has its dangers also. Forces, oftentimes from different sites, people who read stuff, online would say and repeat this myth. Oh yeah, but Democrats are just as bad, or they're just as bad, specifically on this subject of immigration. And I would say, well, you know, just look at the facts, and the facts are the roll call. Who voted for immigration reform and who voted against it? And you can say, yes, there might be one, two, even three Democrats who voted against it. but all the Republicans voted against it, and most Democrats voted for it. And Obama wanted the Dream Act. He wanted comprehensive immigration reform. He offered DACA when that wasn't an option. But the right is only too happy to demonize the Democrats or Obama himself or people who want and are doing the paperwork,
Yeah.
who go through the legal
Even they're being
process.
taken.
Yes,
Yes.
but I mean, even people who wanted that were listening to folks saying Democrats are just as bad when it comes to deportations. And there were deportations because it was law that had to be processed through Congress, right?
Oh,
And the majority of Democrats did want to pass an immigration reform so that border security could be implemented by people who have been here 30 years, raising their children, not being convicted of any crime, of not having had any criminal background, could come out of the shadows and into the light, right?
yes.
But this myth was put into their heads. No, but both sides are just as bad. Both sides want to deport you as bad. So just attack Democrats as much as you attack Republicans. But there
Yeah.
are facts like how many Democrats voted for immigration
Right.
reform and how many won voting against it. And the Republican side has always been attacking that. Also
Yes.
because they want to use that, the immigration issue, and to
It's a
talk about
great fear tactic.
fear tactics. So they don't want to solve the problem. There was a bill in Congress that could have been signed that could have increased money for and resources for the border and offer a path to citizenship for people who've been here doing nothing but work. And they didn't want that because they want to exacerbate the crisis and then have outrage and people that they can manipulate into accepting these kidnappings nowadays.
I can't understand anyone who would be okay with what's going on right now that way. It's so scary. And I actually know so many people who are afraid right
Mhm.
now because of their status. And these are not bad people. But I just saw an Instagram post of a Korean man whose parents brought him over when he was 7 years old. He actually joined the military
Mhm.
and was awarded a Purple Heart. And he is my age, 57. He's been living here for 50 years in the United States. And he's self-deporting to Korea
Mhm.
because of his status. Because he was warned that if he didn't self-deport, that he would be thrown in jail and get deported, you know, in a much more difficult way.
Mhm.
It- that to me doesn't even make sense. They're just not even giving people a chance. They're just, you know, sweeping them all up. And there's so much collateral damage that it's just unacceptable.
And you've seen that there are citizens who've been deported.
Yes.
And what happens is that people start doing a lot of more racial profiling and more arrests and people end up being detained
Of
who
course.
had no reason to be detained, who are even citizens. And the worst of it is Trump has threatened, basically, he said they should be able to deport citizens if they want to, if they disagree with him. So basically, all
Right.
Democrats, they want to deport all of us.
Isn't that the scary thing too? Is that they're looking at people's social media
Hmm.
and seeing if people have protested against against Trump and
Hmm.
the White House or that whole side, the Republicans,
Hmm.
and they're not allowing people to come in or they're deporting them because of protests.
The land of the free.
That to me is really scary.
Hmm.
That you're not even allowed to protest anymore. Like
Hmm.
that was the one thing that set us apart from everybody else.
Hmm.
Freedom to be able to speak out against your government if you were not happy.
Hmm.
And now that's like people are scared.
Freedom of opinion, freedom of the press, all of that is under threat.
We
People's.
cannot allow that to happen,
Mhm.
because then we're just as bad as everything else that we've been fighting against for all of these generations.
Mhm. I think the power of storytelling is to be able to put other folks into somebody else's shoes, show them their struggles, show them our common humanity, And I think that's something that we have to keep up no matter what. Try to
Yes.
elicit
It's
that.
what keeps us human.
Elicit that compassion.
Art and storytelling is what keeps us human.
Hmm. There's so many projects that you've done that we haven't even touched. But we
I
had
know.
this great aside, but you know, we can do one of these again and keep going
I would
and
love to.
because I appreciate you and you have some great insights. Having, having direct family who may be on the other just
I just try really hard to stay open. I love hearing people's stories and understanding where they come from, no matter how different it is,
Mhm.
especially if it's different.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate that of you that I mean, that's part of my mission now is to have us all be on the record and be honest and be free to speak about what we think. And we may not always agree on everything, but
Yeah.
we share that spirit, I guess, of, yeah, there's films and there, but never putting that career or anything professional above our humanity and our moral stance. And that we're brave enough to openly say that, well, we can. We have to fight for that freedom and be vocal and defend. There are communities. I mean, we are privileged. You and I, even I, have privileges, but I think we really have to think about the folks that don't have those privileges and who are vulnerable right now. And they really need all of us to lock arms and speak every chance we get about
Mhm.
all of this that's going on. So I appreciate that a lot. That
Thank
you
you. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. It's
thank
not
you.
easy.
It's not, but I don't see any other option. We got to keep doing it.
For the love of humanity.
Yeah. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. Um, Best of luck with everything, and we'll keep talking. Always stay in touch. I love hearing from
Absolutely.
you. Yeah, we got to do this again. And yeah, and hopefully work together at some point. That'd be
Awesome.
fantastic.
Well,
Don't
thank
forget
you
about,
so much. Thank you for
yeah,
asking. I had a great time.
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. I
Okay.
had a great time. It's always good to see you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
you too.